Boy, am I exhausted. And let me tell you why. Welcome to Unbuckled Comics. If you're new, welcome. There's a liability form on the back table next to the Green Lantern rings. Did they come from MOA? Or did they come from the toy capsule vending machines at my local grocery store? Only time will tell. If you are returning, thank you for your continued support. I am Unbuckled Cape, your host of this comic book review podcast. And today we are going to take a look at Green Lantern. It's actually Hal Jordan Green Lantern Volume 1. Or no, Green Lantern Hal Jordan Volume 1. It's Green Lantern, that's Hal Jordan. It's a Volume 1 of some sort. The title is actually Green Lantern Hal Jordan Volume 1. So, but before we head out on patrol, let's gather some intel first. I have all of the socials. My predominant one is Instagram, by the way, just in case you're wondering. But you can find all of it over at linktree/unbuckledcape.com. That's linktr.ee/unbuckledcomics.com. Uh, Actually, today, as I'm recording, as soon as I'm done recording, one of the things I'm going to do today is cancel the Patreon so I don't have to make that spiel anymore. Uh, Good news for all of you. We did decide that some of our episodes from the Patreon stuff is going to be pushed out over time. And look, this month is Deadpool Wolverine. It comes out this month. Actually, I don't know what date it is. Uh, let's see. Deadpool and Wolverine. So Deadpool 3. When is it releasing? It is July 26th is the release date of that puppy. So on July 17th, you guys are going to get, I'm sorry, not 17th, July 16th. That is 2 weeks from now. You guys are going to be getting an Unbuckled and Unscripted from the backlog of the Patreon catalog. And it ties directly into Deadpool Wolverine. The title of it was What Killed the MCU and Why Deadpool 3 Won't Save It. It was one of my best received Patreon episodes. It's a Patreon episode that I think I am most proud of. I had tons and tons of fun. It might have been the most fun episode I've done. You guys are going to get that this month, and then we'll talk about stuff later down the road of things that you get. I want to get this episode over. I have a lot to do, and the reason I have a lot to do today is because I'm recording this Monday, the day before we drop it, and that's really rare for me. I typically get it done on the weekend, but I had a PTO day. The reason I took a PTO day is this past weekend I was at Hershey Comic Con. Uh, if you have been listening for the last 2 months, you know that I've been doing interviews with some creators. We interviewed Paul Ballman, Keith Williams, and DG Chichester. Leading into the Comic Con, they were both there. I got to meet them, talk to them in person. It was an incredible experience that I'm going to have a hard time describing in just a few short minutes. So don't worry, we are going to be taking an episode. I think it will come in September. I believe September or August, one of the two. You guys will be getting an episode where we talk about the Hershey Comic Con experience, and I say we because I had some help. Thank God, I would not have been able to accomplish this on my own. But my lovely wife, Mrs. Kate, came with me. She was my camera woman for the week. She helped me organize stuff as I was talking to people and meeting with people. She was making Instagram posts, and it was in its own little compartment. It was such a great thing to have her with me doing those things and seeing us, work together on what has become my passion collectively towards a goal and having her input and ideas. And her and I had a great weekend, but she is actually going to join us on the show because it's the first time she's ever done a comic convention. She done outdoorsman shows. Her dad owns a fishing lure company, and she went to outdoor shows for that. But this is a completely different world. I asked her before we ever went, hey, would you be willing to sit down with me and actually have me interview you and see what it's like coming from somebody who knows the comic book world but doesn't know it intimately like a lot of the people that go there do, and just get some ideas from her, and I can sit there and talk about Hershey Comic Con in general. So that'll be another one. And then while I was at the show, if you go over to the Instagram page, you can actually see most of this already. But Saturday morning, day one of the show, I interviewed Mr. Mark Wade. I know he told me not to call him Mister. They all do, but it's a bad habit. Sorry, Mark. Mark Wade, who has written Kingdom Come for DC, spent a good bit of time on Fantastic Four. He wrote the very first comic book that I ever owned, which is a Fantastic Four. And then he wrote and is currently writing Batman Superman World's Finest. As soon as he walked out of the door, Jim Shooter rolled in. Jim Shooter, he was hired at DC at the age of 13. Like, can you imagine? So I sat down with him. We talked about that. We talked a very, very little bit about his time as editor in chief at Marvel. And I needed another like 4 hours, or if someone else put it at the show, 4 days to just sit down and absorb everything that, because I mean he's still doing it, guys. He's on a much smaller scale, but I mean he's going to these conventions, and um, the conversation with him was probably the surprise um of the weekend for us, and we'll talk about why that is down the road. Just a quick hint: the man is very, very tall. He is now that Mr. Stan Lee has passed, Jim Shooter is like the legacy person. And then we had a talk with another legacy person that day, which was an audio only video, or yeah, audio video. That doesn't make sense. An audio only that'll be going out on the podcast. It's was Barbara Friedlander. She is an incredible woman. She just has this loving aura about her. I think we spent as much time talking about my children as we did her career before, and talking about the children before and after we sat down and did our podcast. But she is the first woman to actually create a character for DC, and she had a very, you know for the time frame that she was in, it's a very illustrious career, and she is, again, one of those legacy creators that I can't believe I had the chance to sit down and talk with. You guys will get that. And then Saturday morning, this one is on Instagram. I sat down with the wonderful Bronze Age Batgirl herself, Karen Whitfield. Her and I had a great little live video that we did on Instagram that I will also be putting out on the podcast probably down the road. Everything that's coming out of Hershey Comic Con that I have recorded, you guys are going to get before Christmas, but I am going to space it out to maybe even through December, um, just so that we can keep the reviews consistent, and it gives me actually a nice little cushion as the holidays roll in, to not have to be recording so much and getting to spend the time with the boys and the families and things like that. So as well as not just talking to them, but I met so many other great people, and I have some things that are really lined up, and some other great artists and creators, and I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews. We're going to bring people on to talk about their books and with the great connections, and it was an incredible Comic Con. Aside from that, for your guys' sakes, for your shows, for the concerning of the shows and what's coming up in the immediate future, we have Green Lantern, Hal Jordan Volume 1 today, or this week rather, and then next week you'll get part 2 of that. Following that, we'll have the Deadpool Wolverine Why It Won't Save the MCU episode. And then I am blanking on the next ones, but then come September, we got some stuff to chip away at, and hopefully having some more interviews and things coming up, but you probably aren't going to see any of that until at least September, maybe into October. But I'm going to drag out this Hershey Comic Con stuff, and you're going to hear me talking about it a lot over the next couple of months because it was one of the coolest experiences of my life to be sitting down and, as someone else put it, rubbing elbows with some of the biggest names and nicest people in comics there is. So, um, I do owe you, and I believe I have it scheduled for either October or September, a case file episode on Green Goblin. I did not forget about that. And once that episode gets ready to drop, we will start up another Unbuckled tournament where we will pit some guys together, and the winner of the tournament will get a case file episode. Um, Now that I have sat here and rambled on for about 10 minutes, let's get on to our review of Green Lantern Hal Jordan Volume 1. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, Volume 1, Part 1 for our sake. Because who doesn't love the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie and dove. I can't even say the sentence. I planned for this to be a joke opening, but I can't even get through it without stumbling. Green Lantern Hal Jordan Volume 1 Part 1, because who didn't love the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie and dove into every Green Lantern thing that they could consume, am I right? See, that's what I wanted to say, but I couldn't even do it with a straight face right off the bat. Um, no, I this is a book that I picked up purely because I wanted something good that was Green Lantern, and it was, just looking on the shelves at the comic shop. There was this one there, and I thought, yeah, why not? Really no rhyme or reason, and really no rhyme or reason to why I pulled it off the shelf to give you guys a review on it, other than it was just like, hey, here's a Green Lantern. We haven't talked, just trying to get a different character in the mix. So when I seen the book, on the binding they put the names of the creators, and one was Jones, and I for some reason thought it was like Johns, like Jeff Johns, but it's not. It's Jones. Uh, I don't know if that would have swayed me grabbing it or not, but whatever. So Jared Jones, or I'm sorry, Gerard Jones is the writer. He worked on Justice League Europe, Justice League America, Hulk 2099, Guy Gardner, Dragon Ball, The Flash, Keith Griffin. He is one of the artists. I think he's the penciler in this deal. Justice League Europe, Doom Patrol, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, The Defenders, The Flash. MD Bright, I think, is the colorist. Iron Man, Icon, Power Man, and Iron Fist, Batman, Captain America. Definitely an artist, but I just don't know. I think he was the colorist in the art group. Along with Romeo Romeo Tangala. He, I believe, is it's the penciler, the artist. I believe he was the inker. Worked on the new Teen Titans, Green Lantern, like a couple different Green Lantern titles, Wonder Woman, Fantastic Four, and again for Icon. So, without any further ado, let's get into this. There's 6 issues and then a little mini issue at the end that we'll just kind of glance over and couple it into issue number 6 for the first part of this book. I think the whole thing altogether has 12. I don't know if there's a little extra bonus at the end or not. I actually literally just finished reading this I don't know, 15 minutes ago maybe. So, it should be fresh in my mind. It starts off with a young age Hal Jordan who, 8-10 years old at the most. He watches his father, who is a test pilot for jets, die in a horrific accident. His father refused to abort and eject his chair, and parachute to safety. He just decided to try and land a plane that was malfunctioning and died in the crash. So, right from the beginning, we get to see, or we are shown, that Hal has a lot of childhood trauma. Hal Jordan was a good pilot, but very insubordinate and liked the bottle a little bit. So, out of all the stories that we've done, this is going to be close to episode 70, I believe, by the time you guys are hearing it. And I think this is the first time we've had a character who really struggled with alcohol. And I know a lot of like the early modern age and later silver age, they dealt with this a lot. This is I think 90s comic, so kind of going back to some of the alcoholism that some characters had. uh so Hal Jordan gets fired and dumped, and he's not allowed to fly, which is really the only thing he cares about, all on one page. So kind of a real bad day for him. And he was driving drunk. He had his brother and some friends in the car, and he has a bad accident. He blames a billboard sign for said bad accident, and actually, he paralyzes his best friend in the accident. And what this shows us is, well, let's just, so he paralyzes his friend and checks himself out of the hospital and goes back to working on the flight simulators, which is basically just a little pod that like rocks around and simulates flight. And it's a way for the pilots and the command control to get used to working together, reading monitors and things like that. He's not allowed in an actual plane because of his insubordinates and being fired multiple times and things like that. As he's in this flight simulator, a Green Lantern ring, is able to steal him, which completely adds to his trouble because everyone thinks somehow he stole a flight simulator, which doesn't quite, like, the thing flies out of the wall. Like, how would he plan that? It doesn't make sense. But chapter or issue number 1 is basically just building this character of Hal Jordan for us and how much of a POS this guy kind of is. He never blames himself. He never takes responsibility. He's incredibly hard-headed. When he drunk drives and gets in a car accident, he blames a billboard sign for being too close to the road when he drove off the road at the billboard sign, and then his overcompensation is what caused the vehicle to roll. Like, it's just, he's just a turd, really. And then he gets stolen and taken, and like, we'll get to it later in the story, but it's anyway. How is as a lead character is really unlikable. He is. He's irresponsible. Like I said, he never takes blame. In issue number 2, he almost causes a plane crash because he figures out that his new green ring doohickey that he doesn't fully understand allows him to fly. So as he's flying around Ferris, which is the airplane company that he works for, he sees a pilot out flying around, and he just kind of flies up next to him and waves to him, which startles the pilot and produces this crash. And this is Hal Jordan before he has the costume. Like, the ring just goes on his finger and he's flying around as himself. And when he checks out the crash, like, people are blaming him, and he's like, hey, this is my fault. Like, you're the bad pilot. And so his brother and his brother's girlfriend, who was also in the car accident with him, they walk from the hospital okay. His best friend is paralyzed. Hal clearly has concussions among some other injuries left over from the car accident. And then, like, he gets this ring and he goes and causes another accident. Like, the dude does not think. And it's really kind of funny because when you think of Green Lanterns, that's kind of the opposite of what you think of. They're supposed to be driven by willpower, blah, 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 and really kind of intellectual, but Hal Jordan just doesn't fit the mold. At the end of the story, there's this yellow alien thingy who attacks. Moving on to issue number 3, this alien can't tell the difference between Hal and the Green Lantern. Like, Hal Jordan is trying to escape the alien. He ditches his costume, and the alien's just like, "Where did you go?" Like, it's really comical, but it kind of makes sense for this character, and it also makes sense because of the story of how they needed to give this inexperienced Green Lantern a way to get away from this alien. And also, the alien can't find Green Lantern, so he just goes around destroying everywhere that Hal has been because he can track where the ring was. and that includes the Ferris Airport and the hospital. So now the alien has not only destroyed Hal's place of employ, even though I don't think he would have been employed there very long, he also destroys the hospital, and Hal is informed that there are no survivors, so his best friend is actually murdered by this alien. And for the first time, we kind of see him taking responsibility, saying that this is all his fault, which later on that comes up again, and we'll kind of talk about that when it gets there. Uh, Hal learns like how to charge the ring because it runs out of power when he's fighting the alien. And he also learns that it can answer questions. So like he's kind of sitting in Absur, I think that's how you say his name. The aliens who passed away that gave Jordan the ring. He's sitting in his ship talking to the ring, asking all these questions, and the alien yet again attacks. So like when the ring is in use, it like emits an energy frequency, and that's how this alien, who, by the way, his name is Legion, that's how he is tracking Jordan. So he breaks into the ship, and Jordan kind of makes a comment, boy, I wish there was like some nuclear bombs around, and the ring actually directs him to where the nuclear reactor of this rocket ship is, and Hal blows it himself and the alien known as Legion up. That moves us on to issue number 4, and like here we are, only been recording for 11 minutes or so, and we're halfway through this book, and the pacing of this is very quick, and it is a very quick read. I guess that's a plus for me. So issue number 4, Hal survives the blast, of course, and then blasts off to an alien planet where he meets Tumar. Tumar is another Green Lantern. If you ever seen any pictures of the Green Lantern, he kind of has he has like a beak and then like a fin on the top of his head. Yellow is the color of his skin. Hal helps Tumar deal with a problem on the planet that they are on, but Hal rushing into it without information just causes it to be a much longer process than what it could have been. And the two of them discuss things, but Tumar is very withdrawn and withholds a lot of information, is basically like, well, you need to come with me to Oa, and there's a process that we have to go through. And again, Hal's impatience shows through, and again, he just seems very unlikable. Like, you just get tired of him rushing into stuff. On the planet Oa is where Hal is trained by Kilowog, who is one of my favorite Lantern characters, probably more because of the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited cartoons. He's funny in those. I like that character. I can picture the guy that he is voiced by. Let me take a look to see if I can't find it. Justice League Unlimited cast. I don't know if it's actually going to show up on here, but it is kind of driving me nuts that I can't think of who it is, but I can picture him. Yeah, I didn't think it would show me. Okay, anyway, he's also, I think, in the Superman animated series, maybe. So, anyway, and this training process is probably the best part, because you're getting, again, up to this point, you don't really like Hal Jordan. He's just a jerk. He's a jerk who is just getting away with stuff, He is just skirting by, and you're kind of waiting for him to get his. And this is where it happens. Kilowog is training Jordan and is beating him physically and verbally. And now, when I say that, there's nothing, like, he's using his kind of alien terms. He calls him a poozer a lot. At one point, he does call him like a poop head or something like that. Like, it's good fun. It's funny. Like, I believe it is the best part of the book, even though it only lasts maybe 2-3 pages. So then, of course, Legion has to show up again, and that leads us into issue number 5. Oh, sorry about that. I almost drowned myself in my own water bottle. Jeez. So, issue number 5, Legion shows up and he basically just wipes the floor with the Green Lantern Corps. And, okay, so if you don't know anything about the Green Lanterns, the early Green Lantern, who was Alan Scott was his name, right? He's technically the first Green Lantern. His weakness was the color yellow and wood, and there's always that joke about a number 2 pencil is like a Green Lantern's worst nightmare. The modern Green Lanterns are weak to just the color yellow. This alien robot type thing is the color yellow. So the Lantern power rings don't actually work on him, like, at all. So they, like, get him to come into an underground cavern that the Lanterns are digging, and they close the cavern in around him to try to contain him in that ball, but he's too strong. And they keep using these external things, which, I mean, I guess you would have to do. But as Legion is able to break into the slumber chamber of the Guardians of the Universe, which, again, if you don't know anything about the Green Lanterns, the Guardians are kind of like their... I can't really think of like a Marvel equivalent. So, like, the Guardians are basically what that sounds like. They are in charge of the Green Lantern Corps. They are the most knowledgeable beings in the universe, but that does not mean that they are all knowing. They kind of show that in this book. They're just smarter than everything else. So, they created the Green Lantern Corps, green being the power of will, and they just are basically the universe's police force. And these guys are the self-appointed leaders of such corps. Most of the time, it's fine. Other times, it's not good. They make mistakes too, basically. So you have the most knowledgeable beings running the Green Lantern Corps, but somehow Hal Jordan, this drunk jerk, is the only one to think of, hey, let's rule the alien in mud to cover up the yellow, and then we should be able to hurt him. That's how they beat this guy. This creature, alien robot thing, has beaten and killed multiple Green Lanterns, and the solution to beating him is roll him in a bit of mud and then slap him around. Like, I'm not kidding. And I know that seems like really, really lame, but honestly, the tone of the book is more of a Silver Age tone. It does feel like the fact that this was a 90s comic is a little bit surprising to me. It does feel much older than that. I don't hate it. I just hate that, like, I wish they would have let the Guardians in the sleep chambers and, like, not had them. Because once they come out, they should have just looked at the thing and been like, hey, can we like cover up the guy's yellow and then like just take care of this? Like, I get all the other lanterns panicking because this thing's so powerful and it's just killing them, like killing, their fellow lantern members, but like, come on. You can't tell me that the Guardians weren't like, cover the yellow. Like, it's a little bit ridiculous because everyone is well aware that yellow is the weakness here. So anyway, for some reason, Hal is the only one that can stop it because he's the only one that thinks of covering up the yellow, which is just a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. But to move on from that, like all good villains, he has a final form, and he breaks out of his shell, and he tells Hal Jordan of how there's this alien race that they were, and they were a race built for expansion, and they were consuming planets because that's what their physiology needs them to do to stay alive. The Guardians trapped them on their base planet, their original planet, and they basically consumed each other and became this gooey sentient being where all their souls mess together, hence the name Legion. Legion meaning we are many. Yeah, weird stuff. So, issue number 6, the gelatinous goopy monster that is Legion starts to consume the lanterns and the planets. Like, it's basically the worst case of gooey tar, and it starts sapping the life out of the planet. And the Guardians decide that they are just going to abandon Oa and go and move to a new planet and deal with it later. Like, that's their solution. Again, the most intelligent beings on Earth. That's their solution. Hal obviously defies orders and flies into the main power lantern, causing him this, like, I guess it's more like a godlike cosmic power ability. He's not quite what he becomes in the Blackest Night, where he becomes the White Lantern. Like, it's not that big, but he basically takes and becomes a battery for the full power of the Green Lantern, and it creates like this green tornado that basically just twists this goopy goop up into space, leaving it there floating for the other lanterns to then take back to their planet, like its original planet, re-barricaded in. And the Guardians basically explain to Jordan that the hope will be that when it creates itself into new life again, it will be something a little more benign. Doesn't seem like the greatest plan for beings that claim to be the smartest beings. It's a little bit odd. And then, of course, like, Hal has no memory of doing what he did. He actually thinks everyone dies except him and the Guardians. And then, of course, all the Lanterns show up and they're, yay, good job, Hal. Tell us how you did it. The Guardians grant him Lantern status and send him back to be in charge of Sector 2814, which is the sector of Earth, because they just want him very far away from them. They seem to not like him, but they like his potential. So, yeah. And this, then, we get this little mini issue at the back. I don't know if it probably was just like an issue to gap between Emerald Dawn and then Emerald Dawn 2, which is the latter half of this trade. Hal goes back home, turns himself in and pleads guilty to all charges with the drunk driving, goes to jail, and when he's released from jail, he gets his job back. So, like, no real punishment for the guy. If I was reading this, if this was a series that I would have been pulling from my comic shop, that might have been enough for me to give it up. But because I bought this in a trade, and I know that in the next 6 issues, my opinion of it changes in the next 6 issues, this is probably the way to read it. It's just, like, I enjoy the story because, oddly enough, it is because of Hal Jordan. He is an unlikable, and his stubbornness basically keeps him winning, and it really irks the Guardians. Like, it drives them nuts that he just disobeys orders and things turn out well for him. And it's different, You could read a Superman story and you're supposed to like Superman. You're supposed to have sympathy for what Batman went through and what he's trying to accomplish. Like, you can read a Wonder Woman story and you're going to admire who she is and the warrior that she is. Everybody loves Spider-Man and who he is and the stuff that he deals with. There's always an X-Men that you can find to identify with your personal self. There isn't a soul out there who doesn't like the Turtles just because the Turtles are freaking awesome. This is different. This is a superhero story where we're reading about a superhero that is neither a really super or a hero, and he's a jerk and you don't like him, but you are witnessing his unlikable qualities continuing to get him on top. And that includes his ability to push aside his fear, which in issue number 6 we see a couple of times where at one point he is frozen by fear in face of this giant gelatinous monster, and it almost gets him killed. And then that fear strikes again right before he dives into the main lantern power battery thingy. Jeez, words, Kate, words. Before he dives into the main lantern power source, and he overcomes that fear, which is why the ring supposedly chose him. And like I said, part 1 is like, so the art is absolutely classic, and aside from some things like some dialogue that just doesn't age well, there's no technical issues with the stories. It's well written, and the pacing is the word I'm looking for. The pacing is very, very well done. It's, like I said, it's a quick read. It's a good read.
it passes as a very, very solid origin story for Hal Jordan, because he really isn't a likable character even later on. He's very arrogant, and he again can be quite the jerk, and this first 6 issues of this trade really shows that well. So I have a hard time knocking it for anything. At the moment, is it a what are you doing? No, it's probably a get on it. Yes, the way they beat Legion is kind of silly, but it really works in this story. And again, if I remember correctly, part 2 is a completely different like angle on the character of Hal, and we're going to dive into how he's going to have to handle who he is and deal with who he is versus being a, you know, intergalactic policeman, which it gets interesting. And in this book, we did see and have slight dialogue from Sinestro, who eventually becomes leader of the Yellow Lantern Corps and Hal's basically arch enemy. So he made an appearance in the first 6, and if I remember correctly, he actually plays a pretty big part in the back 6 issues of this trade, and that's where we are going to pick it up next week. Going to make this a 2-part episode again, and again, you just gotta wait for next week. At the end of next week, we're going to have a more conclusive story with this. It's going to make a little bit more sense, I promise you. Until next week, guys, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes. I'd like to just take a couple seconds here to give a huge shout out to my Cape Crusaders, the Patreons over at Unbuckled Comics. Without you guys, I just don't feel like I would be doing this anymore. You guys are a huge part of what keeps me motivated. So a big thank you to Storm Beagle, co-host of the Retrotopia podcast, Sergeant Pickle, Jared, Big Kid 782, Because19, Fallen Snow Kiku, Randy of the Rewatch Play podcast, Captain Alcatraz, and Captain N, the other co-host of the Retrotopia podcast. You guys are my heroes.